Good morning, students. Very good morning, students. Last class we already discussing about structure of neuron and structural and function unit of the neuron are also known as a nerve cell. What are the structures are present in the nerve cell? Neuron. What are the parts are present? What are the parts? Dendrites and cell body, axons. We can discuss in the last class. We already discussed in the structure of neurons. Today class. Today we are going to discussing about types of neurons. What is the name? Types of neurons. Today class we are going to discussing about types of neurons. 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 In this class we are going to discussing about in the detailed manner how many types of neurons. These types of neurons, it is based on the number of process. What is the first type of the what is the first classification of the types of neurons? What is the first classification? It is based on the basis of different process. On the basis of different process, the neurons are classified into apolar neurons, unipolar neurons, bipolar neurons, pseudo-unipolar neurons, multipolar neurons. Based on the polarity, based on the process, the neurons are classified into, based on the polarity, based on the different process, the neurons are classified into 5 types. What is the first type of the neurons? Apolar neurons. What is a neuron? Apolar neuron. What is a neuron? Apolar neuron. What is the second neurons? What is the second type of neurons? Unipolar neurons. Unipolar neurons. What is the third neurons? Bipolar neurons. What is the fourth neurons? After the bipolar neurons, pseudo-unipolar neurons. The fifth type of neurons is known as a multipolar neurons. What is the fifth one? Multipolar neurons. Types of neurons on the basis of different process, on the basis of polarity, the neurons are classified into 5 types. What is the first polarity? Apolarity or apolar neurons. Unipolar, single polarity. Here polarity is absent. Here bipolar means 2 polarities. Pseudo-unipolar means false polarity. But here multipolar means many polarities. Based on the polarity, based on the process, the neurons are classified into how many types? 5 types. What is the first type? Apolar neuron. A means polarity is absent. Polarity is absent. polarity is absent. Polarity is absent. This apolar neurons, you can observe apolar neurons. You can observe apolar neurons means only cell body present. Only cell body present. Cell body present. Cell body present. Cell body present. Axon and dendrites absent. Axon and dendrites. Axon and dendrites absent. Axon and dendrites absent. Here axon absent, dendrites absent. Axons absent, dendrites are absent. Apolarity means they are not having any polarity, they are not having any process, only single cell body is present. This type of neurons you can observe in. It is the best example for the apolar neurons. Cylinderata, example, Hydra. What is the example? Apolar neurons. Example for the apolar neurons. Cylinderata. What is the example? Cylinderata. What is the best example for the Cylinderata? Cylinderata phylum. Cylinderata phylum. What is the best example? Hydra. What is the best example? Hydra. Jellyfish, sea anemones, sea pennatula, sea fan. These are all example for the apolar neurons. This type of neurons, apolar means axon is absent, dendrite is absent, only cell body, no process, no polarities, no axon polarity, no dendrite polarity, only cell body is present. This type of neurons you can observe in Cylinderata. Cylinderata phylum. What is the best example for the Cylinderata phylum? Hydra. What is the best example of Cylinderata phylum? Hydra. Coming to the second, unipolar neurons. What is the unipolar neurons? What is the second one? Unipolar neurons. What is the second one? Unipolar neurons. This uni means single polarity. Uni means single polarity. Single polarity means it consists of cell body and axon. It consists of cell body and axon. But here only cell body. Only cell body, axon absent, dendrites absent. Okay, only cell body. Apolarity means no polarity. Coming to the here, single polarity. Polarity means cell body is present, axon is present, but the dendrite is absent. Dendrite is absent. This unipolar neurons means the single means unipolar means one polarity. What is the polarity? Axon polarity. It is the cell body present, axon also present, but the dendrite is absent. This type of neurons you can observe in the early embryonic stage of the vertebrata. It is the early embryonic stage of the vertebrata. Vertebrata means in your human body also. Fishes, amphibians, reptiles, apes, human beings. In the early embryo of the vertebrata. What is the example for the unipolar? What is the example for the unipolar in early embryo? Early embryo of the vertebrata. In early embryo of the vertebrata means at the time of the embryo condition. Once the embryo growing inside the mother womb, the embryo consists of which type of neurons? Unipolar neurons. Unipolar means only one polarity, that is a polarity, axon polarity. Dendrite is absent. This type of neurons you can observe in the early embryo of the vertebrata, like animals like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, human beings also. Once you are growing the mother womb, your embryo consists of unipolar neurons. Coming to the bipolar neurons. What is it? Coming to the bipolar neurons. Bi means two polarity. The two polarity means it is the cell body. One is consist of axon, one is consist of dendrite. Okay, one is dendrite, one is axon. It is the cell body. This bipolar neuron means bi means two. What is the polarity? First one, dendrites as well as axon. Dendrites present, axon is present. That's why it is indicate bipolar neurons. These bipolar neurons you can observe in two places in our body. What is the best place? Olfactory epithelium and retina of the eye. What is an example for this one? Bipolar neurons. Example for bipolar neurons. Olfactory epithelium. Olfactory epithelium present in the nasal chamber. Nasal chamber. These olfactory epithelium cells are helpful for the smell. They can identify smell. How you can identify smell? With the help of bipolar neurons. This nasal chambers means they are located in the nose. There are olfactory epithelium present in the nose. This olfactory epithelium consists of these bipolar neurons. These bipolar neurons are helpful for they receive smell. They identify the smell. Whether the smell is bad or good, they will identify. Bipolar neurons are present in the, what is the location of the bipolar neurons? Olfactory epithelium and also retina of the eye. What is the name? Retina of the eye. What is the function of the retina? They are helpful for the vision. Which neurons are helpful for the vision? Bipolar neurons. What is the example for the bipolar neurons? Olfactory epithelium present in the nose and also retina of the eye. They are helpful for the vision. The vision also they are helpful for the bipolar neuron. Coming to the pseudo-unipolar neuron. What is a neuron? Pseudo-unipolar neuron. Pseudo-unipolar neuron. Pseudo means false. Pseudo means false polarity. Okay, now how many polarities? Single polarity. See once here. Okay, pseudo-unipolarity means okay, it is the cell body indicate cell body. It is indicate dendrites. It is indicate axon. Pseudo-unipolar. It is indicate one polarity, but it is the of dendrites, of axon. Of dendrite, of axon. Of dendrite, of axon means it is the false unipolarity. What is the meaning of pseudo-unipolarity? Pseudo means false. Uni means single. How many polarities? Only one polarity. But they will exhibit two. But that it is not a completely formed polarity. Here of dendrites. Here of axon. Of dendrites, of axon. It is not a complete polarity. It is a cell body present. Dendrites present, axon present. But dendrite is half. Axon is half. They are not completely formed. This pseudo-unipolar. Pseudo means false polarity. This type of neurons present in the This type of neurons are present in the, what is the example for this? Pseudo unipolar dorsal root of the ganglia, dorsal root of the ganglia, dorsal root of the ganglia in spinal cord, dorsal root of the ganglia, dorsal root of the ganglia, dorsal side, dorsal root of the ganglia. Ganglia means group of cell bodies, group of cell bodies, group of cell bodies, group of cell bodies. The group of cell body consists of neurons. Dorsal side, back side of the spinal cord. What type of neurons are present in the dorsal root of the spinal cord, back side of the spinal cord? What is the neurons? Pseudo unipolar neurons. Pseudo unipolar neurons. Coming to the fifth, multipolar neurons. Multipolar means single axon, many dendrites. Multi means many. Multi means many. Many means single axon. Single axon. Many dendrites. Many dendrites. We already discussing about the yesterday class. What is yesterday class? That is the structure and function of the neuron or nerve cell. It is a single axon. The single axon. But the single axon. The single axons. The single axons. The single axon and the single axon. Single axon, many dendrites. It is known as a multipolar neurons. It is known as a multipolar neurons. Single axon, many dendrites. It is known as a multipolar neuron. These multipolar neurons are present in the central nervous system. It is brain and spinal cord. Brain and spinal cord. It is based on the types of neurons. It is based on the polarity or different process. How many types of neurons? 5 types. First one apolar, second one unipolar, third one unipolar, bipolar, pseudo unipolar, multipolar. Apolar means polarity is absent, only cell body is present. Axon and dendrite is absent. This type of neurons are present in the Coelenterata phylum. Example, hydra, jellyfish. Hydra and jellyfish, sea anemones. Coming to the second type of neurons, unipolar. Uni means single polarity. Cell body is present. Okay, axon is present, but dendrite is absent. This type of neurons are present in the early stage of in the early embryo of the vertebrate like fishes, amphibians, reptiles, birds, human beings. And also the third one, it is known as a bipolar neurons. Bi means two polar. Two polar means one is axon, one is dendrite. This type of neurons are present in the olfactory epithelium of the nose and retina of the eye. They are helpful for the smell as well as vision purpose. What is the function? Vision purpose. And also pseudo unipolar neurons. Pseudo means false polarity. Of dendrites, of axon is found. This type of neurons are located in the dorsal root of the ganglia. Ganglia means group of cell body consists of pseudo unipolar neurons. Example for the pseudo unipolar neurons, dorsal root of the ganglia of the spinal cord. Coming to the multipolar. Multipolar means many polarities. Many polarity means many dendrites, single axon. They are present in the brain and spinal cord. It is a first classification. It is based on the basis of different process and polarities. Different process and polarities. First one, on the basis of polarity, on the basis of process. Coming to the second one, on the basis of, what is the second classification? On the basis of, function. On the basis of function. On the basis of function, the neurons are classified into two types. The neurons are classified into two types. Coming to the, see here, neurons are classified into, on the basis of function, the neurons are classified into two types. The neurons are classified into two types. What is the first type of neurons? What is the first type of neurons? First type of neurons is known as the afferent neurons. What is the first type? Afferent neurons. Afferent neurons. What is the second one? Efferent neurons. Efferent neurons. Efferent neurons. What is the first type of neurons? Afferent neurons. Efferent neurons. Afferent neurons is also known as a sensory neurons. Sensory neurons. It is known as a sensory neurons. The efferent neurons are also known as motor neurons. What is the neurons? Motor neurons. The efferent neurons are also known as a sensory neurons. Efferent neurons are also known as a motor neurons. These neurons are also known as a sensory neurons, are also known as efferent neurons, are also known as a receptor neurons. Receptor neurons. These neurons are also known as a receptor neurons. These neurons are also known as a effector neurons. What is the neurons? Effector neurons. Effector neurons. These neurons are also known as a motor neurons. Efferent neurons. The motor efferent neurons are also known as a motor neurons. Are also known as a effector neurons. Effector neurons. Effector neurons. What is the function of this afferent neurons and efferent neurons? What is the function of the afferent neurons? Afferent neurons. What is the function of the afferent neurons? What is the function of the efferent neurons? Efferent neurons. What is the function of the afferent neurons and efferent neurons? Afferent neurons means they will transmit the impulse, message sent to the central nervous system to, they will send, afferent means they will send the message to the sensory organs to central nervous system. Sensory organs to central nervous system. What is the function of the afferent neurons? Sensory organs, they will send message to sensory organs to central nervous system. Sensory organs to, as well as brain and as well as spinal cord. That is the example for the afferent neurons. What is the function of the efferent neurons? They will send the message to the central nervous system to sensory organs. Central nervous system to sensory organs. Central nervous system, brain and spinal cord to sensory organs. Brain and spinal cord to sensory organs. These neurons is known as afferent neurons. The afferent neurons are also known as motor neurons. Afferent neurons are also known as sensory neurons. What is the function of the afferent neurons? They will send message to the sensory organs to central nervous system. And the efferent neurons, the central nervous system to sensory organs. The afferent neurons, they will send message to the central nervous system. The central nervous system, they will send message to the sensory organs. You can represent afferent neurons and efferent neurons. See here, afferent neurons to efferent neurons. For example, receptor. What is the name? Receptor. Okay, receptor. What do you know? Receptor. Receptor means the receiving cells. These receptors are present in the receptors are present in the receptors are present in the sensory organs. The receptors are present in the receptors are present in the sensory organs. Sensory organs. Sensory organs. The receptors are present in the sensory organs. The sensory organs. The sensory organs. These consist of what is the neurons? The sensory organs consist of afferent neurons. Afferent neurons. The afferent neurons. The sensory organs consist of receptor. The receptor receive the stimuli. Receive the stimuli. Stimuli means any cold, any cold, any hot, any temperature, the receptors they receive. Once the outside more cold, you can receive. This means the receptors are present in the sensory organs. This sensory organ consists of afferent neurons. These afferent neurons send the message to the central nervous system. Central nervous system. They will send message to the central nervous system. The afferent neurons, they will send sensory organs to central nervous system. They will send message to sensory organs to central nervous system. The central nervous system is consist of one important neurons. They will analyze the neurons. They are the analyzed neurons. This entire neurons is known as relay neurons. What is the neurons? Relay neurons. These neurons are also known as the associated neurons. Associated neurons. This part, it is consist of, this center consists of motor neurons as well as sensory neurons. Okay, after the information, they will send into the central nervous system to motor neurons. See, afferent neurons. Afferent neurons. They will send message to the effector. They will send message to the effector. Effector means sensory organs. They will send message to the sensory organs. The information is carried by the sensory organ to central nervous system. Afferent neurons. Efferent neuron means central nervous system to effector or sensory organs. Central nervous system to sensory organs. Central nervous system and brain and spinal cord consist of associated neurons, relay neurons. This neurons is consist of motor neurons as well as sensory neurons. Okay, sensory neurons. Based on the function, the neurons are classified into two types. What is the first type of neurons? Afferent neurons. What is the second type of neurons? Efferent neurons. Efferent neuron means they will carry the message from the sensory organs to receptor to sensory organs to central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. What is the efferent neurons? They will send message to the brain and spinal cord to brain and spinal cord, central nervous system to and sensory organs or effectors. These are the receivers. Okay, coming to it is a second classification of on the basis of function. What is the third classification of the types of the neurons? What is the third classification? What is the third classification of the types of the neurons? What is the third classification of the neurons? What is the third classification? What is the third classification of the neurons? What is the third classification? It is the third classification on the basis of myelin sheath. Myelin sheath means it is nothing but phospholipid. What is the name? Phospholipid. phospholipid. Myelin is nothing but lipids. These are nothing but phospholipid. This phospholipid layer, it is covered, it is wrapped around the axons. But the sum of the axons, they are not consist of, they don't consist of this myelin sheath. Myelin sheath is present or absent. These neurons are classified into myelinated neurons and non-myelinated neurons. Myelinated neurons, myelinated neurons, myelinated neurons, myelinated neurons, non-myelinated neurons, myelinated neurons, non-myelinated neurons. Myelinated neurons means the myelin sheath is present. Myelin sheath, myelin sheath, myelin sheath present, myelin sheath present, and Schwann cell present, Schwann cell present. Myelin sheath present, Schwann cell is present. But here myelin sheath is absent. Myelin sheath is absent. Myelin sheath is absent. Schwann cell present. Schwann cell present. Schwann cell present. Myelin sheath is absent, but Schwann cell is present. The myelin sheath is present means they participate in saltatory conduction. The ions jump into the one, not run into the other. But here non-myelinated means there is a slow conduction, the slow transmission, because of the myelin sheath is absent. If you observe the myelin sheath is absent means it is look like a grey color. The myelin sheath is present means it is a white color. White color. Non-myelinated neuron means grey color. What is the color? Grey color. Grey color. This non-myelinated present in the grey matter. They are located in the grey matter. We are discussing about the what is the grey matter, what is the white matter. At the time of the we are discussing about that is a brain. Okay, it is present in the white matter. White matter. Myelin is myelinated neurons means myelinated neurons means myelinated neurons means myelinated neurons means myelin sheath is present. Myelin sheath is present. Myelin sheath is present. Myelin sheath is present. Schwann cells also. Myelin sheath is present. Schwann cells also present. Myelin sheath is present. Schwann cells also present. Myelin sheath is present. But here myelin sheath is absent. This type of neurons. This type of neurons. Schwann cell is present. Schwann cell is present. Here, myelin sheath absent. Myelin sheath is absent. Myelin sheath is absent. Myelin sheath is absent. Myelin sheath is absent. What is it? Myelin sheath is present. Myelin sheath is absent. It is located in the grey matter. It is located in the white matter. It is located in the white matter. It is based on the three classifications. It is based on the three classification. Thank you very much.